己の行いを悔やまずともよい。武士道というは死ぬことと見つけたり。
Hopefully you've watched the trailer by now or you've heard about the game. If not, Trek To Yomi is a narrative hack and slash adventure game where you, as Hiroki, our protagonist, are venturing into the underworld to save that which you love the most. I am Cody Matthew Johnson. I'm a composer, a music producer, and creative director.
Hello, my name is Yoko Honda. I'm a co-composer and also a music director. Trek To Yomi is set back in the Edo period, 400 years ago in Japan.
The game is a side-scroller, but it feels realistic, almost borderline punishing at times. It's very difficult. You need to time your abilities and your attacks and respond to the gameplay as fast as possible. The trek to Trek To Yomi began in September of 2019. My collaborator and I, Yoko Honda, met the game's creative director and writer, Leonard Menciari, at the Tokyo Game Show. He showed us this game that looked like a scene out of a Kurosawa film. It looked absolutely spectacular. And at that time, it was just Leonard's vertical slice. One person making this experience, and it already had so much promise and intrigue and interest. It was about 18 months until development really picked up with Devolver and the Flying Wild Hog team. And we were there with Leonard the whole way. He wanted to keep this game as true to the culture of the Edo period.
The world of Yomi is a place after life. People from Shinto religion believe that it's somewhere that all the souls after death are going to be headed.
If you've watched any gameplay, you'll see that this is a love letter to Akira Kurosawa and his films and Japanese cinema. Films like Rashomon and Seven Samurai course through the veins of this game.
Akira Kurosawa worked together with the composer Fumio Hayasaka, and the reason why they were so special in terms of cinematic music is because up until then in Japanese cinematic history, no one really cared about cinematic music as a main theme. Kurosawa and Hayasaka knew that music is a very important and powerful element to enhance the story. So we took a lot of elements from Kurosawa and Hayasaka's technique.
There's a particular graininess, an analog factor to those recordings that make it very evocative and almost unsettling in tense moments. So the soul of these two people, Akira Kurosawa, Fumio Hayasaka, were a big part of our job to incorporate and to learn from and to apply to the score for Trek To Yomi. The next piece of the puzzle was finding out how to represent the time and the place of this game in the music. And so we find ourselves in the Edo period, in the middle of feudal Japan.
Edo period lasted more than 200 years, and in terms of music, it was a very important era because before Edo period, all the music was more focused on rituals, ceremony, or festival. Oftentimes, the instruments were more for noble people or higher ups. So people in Edo period try to make it more accessible. The rhythmic aspect and harmonic styles and everything was more established closer to what we would play these days.
The goal was always, since the very beginning, to create an experience that is respectful and deeply rooted in the historical accuracy of the Edo period and feudal Japan.
When it comes to something historic, every single detail needed to be checked thoroughly. Devolver Digital took this game and the culture aspect of Japan very seriously. They hired professionals to check historical accuracy and not just the music, but also picture, story, characters' pronunciation, name accuracy for the period. So we did it to make sure that we really try to recreate what they used to play back in those days, 300 to 400 years ago.
So where do you start? How do you do this? Hours and hours of research. Learning not only the instruments and what they sound like, but the expressivity of these instruments and the music systems that they use during the Edo period, which is much different than westernized music.
We have so many unique and peculiar instruments. Shamisen, koto, taiko. Some instruments were only available for more noble people versus some were strictly used by commoner people. And we do have our own scales.
No do, re, mi, no Ionian scale, none of that. It's very specific scales, inflections, melodic treatments, harmonic treatments, and we're locked into the flutes native to Japan at the time. So things like the ryuteki and the shinobue and hichuriki. We're locked into some of the stringed instruments. A biwa is very similar to a bass guitar or a banjo. So we have creative limitations, but it's a box. Everyone says think outside the box, but there are an infinite number of creative possibilities inside the box, and I find that's where creativity really flourishes.
So there were so many layers of consideration that we needed to take as a team. It was very challenging to write traditional Japanese music without breaking any historic accuracy.
Once we got our instruments, we knew the next step was how are we going to translate these instruments? They would be played with respect and honor, and by someone who is trained to do that on them. So we're going to obviously record these musicians, but I think about the recording technology available in Japan in the 1940s. The microphones and the preamps and the outboard console gear that they were able to use when recording those scores, and not only that, but the recording techniques of mic placements and all of these different factors combined together to get a very specific sound. When we were recording Soloists, we did it here in LA at a legendary studio called The Village. The Village is known for having incredible gear, and you can hear it on any of the records that are recorded there. There is vibe, and that is exactly what we were going for. So we called up The Village and said, bust out the locker, get us the RCA microphones. Anything that is going to sound bad good, we want a vintage sound, which inherently means imperfections, maybe crackling and some distortion, saturation, and really, truly dialed in a special sound for these instruments. So before pen ever hit paper or a single note was written on this game, we brought all these puzzle pieces together. We had the cultural elements from Edo period instruments and feudal Japan, and Akira Kurosawa and Fumio Hayasaka and 1940 cinema, as well as the technology that they had available at the time. And so by combining all these things, the stage was set to write music for Trek To Yomi.
I was born in Japan, raised in a tiny village. That village is heavily influenced by 12th century samurai culture. And when I lived in that tiny little village in Japan, I learned a lot about traditional culture and music. Every summer there was a festival, very traditional and sacred. And I remember the music was very unique in pitch, and it was very special. When I was composing music for this game, Trek To Yomi, it was my personal musical soul-searching journey as well. We aimed something very organic and true to the history, and I'm very, very happy to see the whole result.